All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're joined by a brand new guest. Her name is Amie McNee. She has written an incredible book. We Need Your Art. Stop messing around and make something. And so, Amie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your time, your work. It's made a big impact on me.
Glenn, I'm so joyful to be here. I feel like the world was working against us a little bit as to making this happen, but we have
So much.
we have made it happen, and I'm so glad that we get to be here and to talk about really important things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So before we jump into the book and all the things, could you take a moment to maybe introduce yourself to our listeners, especially for people who are maybe new to you, your work? They don't follow you on Instagram like many of us do. Who is Amie McNee? How do you spend your days? Tell us what we need to know.
Mm, beautiful. It really surprises me how I've not gotten any better at introducing myself after, especially after this book tour. And every time it's slightly different. So let's see what
Let's see
happens
where it
right now.
goes.
So my name is Amie McNee, and I'm predominantly a fiction author. I have always wanted to tell stories. And so I started taking myself seriously as a writer over a decade ago. I wanted to be a professional author. I wanted to be a novelist. And along that journey, which was incredibly challenging, very beautiful, but very hard, I also started documenting the creative process, what it was like to be someone who took their art very seriously. And as this bizarre and beautiful side consequence of me taking my fiction seriously, I developed this, beautiful, incredibly intimate community of artists as I shared the journey of what it was like to be a creative person and to be taking my creativity seriously. And that was on Instagram. I just started telling my story on Instagram in September 2014. And it's called Inspired to Write. And I just started documenting what it was like to be an artist. And along that journey, I have found, so thousands and thousands of other creatives who have navigated such similar things to me, who have, faced perfectionism, procrastination, imposter syndrome, the pain of other people not understanding what the hell it is we're up to. And we've gotten to build as a community together. And I felt so much less alone. And I felt so seen and heard on this creative journey because of this community that I started building. And so recently, my first nonfiction book, We Need Your Art, came out, which is really 10 years of documenting my creative life put into one book. Like, what does it take to be an artist? And I'm so joyful to have it out in the world now and to get to see other artists reading it and to get to be in community with other creatives as they navigate their own journey.
Mm. Yeah, it's so good I've been following you for I think maybe like a year and a half now, and when you announced that book, it came at like the perfect time in my life. It was like the stars aligned for my own personal journey when this book came out because um I used to do a lot of art when I was a kid. I was always somewhere with a sketch pad. I was always drawing, coloring something. And I can remember in middle school, we did this segment in art class on pop art. I was like, oh man, this is the coolest thing. Like all the colors and the shapes. So this is wild. And my art teacher's like, you can go to art school and you can learn all these different kind of art stuff. I'm like, oh, that's the best. It's so amazing. And so I went home and I told somebody, there's somebody in my life who was very important to me. He was an artist, and I told him all about this thing and this thing I wanted to do. And he said, "Yeah, but your art's not really good enough to do that." And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, yeah." So, you gotta have realistic dreams. You've got to think about how you're gonna make money someday, and you got to think about, supporting yourself. And it might be a cool hobby you can do, but it's not really gonna be able to do anything with it. And so I put my stuff away for like 30 years.
Oh,
I never
Glenn.
picked up another sketch pad, another anything. And I started to do some healing in my own life, and my father had passed away, and that sent me into a lot of different spaces. And I decided I wanted to really discover my inner child. And so I got
Mm.
back into art, and my wife and my daughter, my mom bought me some art supplies, and I just started making stuff. And that's when I came across your work and your book, and your words of encouragement to just make stuff and just have fun with
Mm.
it. And it's really
Mm.
unlocked a lot for me. So.
Wow, what an incredible story. And it amazes me how many people do have a singular moment where they can point to and say, I stopped right then.
Yeah.
And especially when we were young or younger. Do you know how old you were when that happened to you, when they
I
said
had to
that to
be
you?
maybe in, I want to say sixth or maybe seventh grade.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah,
It's so often done to us as children.
yeah,
An adult or someone older than us comes into our lives and says, "Hey, you have to be a child. You have to be realistic. That this isn't a feasible way to spend your time. That art is not important, and it could be something you do as a side, but I really think that you should, put it down the priority list."
yeah,
We have people who have art teachers who say things like that, parents who say things like that, friends who say things like that, and it ruins lives and it deprives this world of art. And it is so heartbreakingly sad. And I just wish that I could go back. And I know that really this is what you've been doing as you've been healing, but could go back to that version of Glenn and just like tell him that his work is so needed and so
yeah.
important, and that wanting to do this professionally is a very fucking legitimate thing to want to do. And that I'm so sorry that someone else put their pain onto you. That was so undeserved. It was wrong. What he said was wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
Thank you. Thank you. So your book, you divide your book into four acts, which is brilliant because for me, I'm a very step-by-step person. So when you break things down like that, I was like, yes, this book is going to make a lot of sense to me. But the four acts are the case for creativity is number one. Number two is you are the artist. Number three is blocks. Number four is building an abundant practice. So what I thought we could do is maybe make our way through these four acts as many as we can. We might only get through a couple, who knows? And we'll see what kind of rabbit holes we
That sounds
discover. Does that sound like a
wonderful.
plan? All right, perfect.
Sounds
So,
wonderful.
so Act One, the case for creativity.
Mm,
We've kind of touched on this already, but you bring a light into this section, which I think is so important, has been for my journey, is how society and how people in our lives have misinformed us regarding creativity, right? We have
mm.
this lie that, it's a waste of time, it doesn't make real money for people, it can't be at the heart of a real job. Talk to us a little bit more about these lies that society tells us, and lies that really we might not even recognize that they are lies because they're so ingrained into our thinking. And then maybe a little bit about that real power, like the science that you talk about in the book
Mm.
behind like creativity having the power to bring healing to our lives and to our world. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think this first section could have been like multiple books because I think about it so often. I think it's so important. And as you say, it's so ingrained in our culture to believe that art and the creative act is not important, that it's going to take us such a long time. And to me, it takes, I'm still working through it every day, trying to understand and trying to reintegrate new stories that say
Mhm.
art is integral to the human experience. Art is so important to my life. Art is so important to our world becoming a better place. Like these are revolutionary stories and we've been told the literal opposite of them.
Mhm.
And I cynically think that there's a very good reason why we have a system that teaches us that art is something for kids, perhaps, maybe for the retired, but really not for adults. I think there's a reason why we've been told that because artists are revolutionaries, because we're rebels, because we shake up systems that are in place. And if you look at our very industrialist capitalist system, when the artist gets a loud voice, we make people question the systems we're living in. And so I think, again, and it is a cynical view, but I think there is some truth to it that there's a reason why we're constantly told that the artist can never make real money, that the artist is wasting their time, that if you want to prioritize art in your life, you're being delusional, that, spending your time painting is ridiculous. What you should be doing is spending your time exercising. These are all stories that are there for a reason. And I think we need to understand that
Mhm.
so that we can start deconstructing them and realizing that they're there to keep us small. You are here to lead a big, beautiful life full of creativity. And in order to do that, you need to recognize the stories you've been told are lies, and they are lies. Art sits at the center of the human experience. And again, our culture has made us forget that.
Mhm.
It is the only thing that really separates us from animals, is that we create, we instinctively create. And we've been doing it since, the very, very beginning. We want to put things into the world that wasn't there before. And I believe that all humans have a creative birthright. Like people often ask, or like, why should I be an artist? Like, what do I have to say? Like, why do I have the right to make something? And my response is always like, you're a human being and you were granted the right to create at birth. Like, this is yours to wield however you want to wield it. But it will be a rebellious and revolutionary thing to do because, again, we don't live in a society that asks us to prioritize it. In that first chapter, I say that art is the missing pillar of self-development. And this is kind of looking at the second part of your question, Glenn, because more than it being a very viable way to make money, and make a career. It's also just an incredible thing for us as human beings to do. And I think we live in a culture that's so obsessed with, the best protocols for exercise, the best protocols for productivity. We've got an ice bath, we got to, get our sunlight exposure, and we're missing what creativity does for us physiologically, like to our actual bodies, what creativity does for us, our mental health, what creativity does for our sense of purpose and agency. And there's just the most juicy amount of research that isn't spoken about nearly enough that says art literally makes us healthier, happier, healed human beings. And I want us to talk about it more.
Yeah. That's so good. It's when I started my art, when I got those paint supplies from my family and I started making stuff. I remember I made the first thing I made, somebody had sent me a message and like, how much is that? And I was like, what? And they're like, that piece. And I'm like, I don't know. Like why like why are you asking? They're like, because I want to hang it in my house. I'm like, you want to hang that in your house? They're
Oh,
like,
Glenn, that's so
why?
beautiful.
Why? And they said, well, I think it's really cool. Like it was a cartoon character and like it brings up a lot of nostalgia
Mm,
inside. I'm like, oh, that's why I made it for myself, is because it was awakening that inner child in me. And so I noticed that other people were feeling that same sense of joy that I was feeling
mm,
inside. And so I started to put them on my website. And I put like a price on them because people were asking how much they were. So I was like, well, I don't know. I guess if I think of my time and the supplies, blah blah blah. But I have a note there that says, like, you could just make me an offer and I'll just give it to you. And I've given so many away for free, and people are like,
mm,
that's crazy that you just give. Like, how long did that take you? I'm like, I don't know, like 5, 10 hours, whatever. Like, you gave it for free. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, because for me, it's like it's not about the money. It's about the fact that it
mm.
brings me this immense sense of joy to my inner child to reconnect with Bugs Bunny or Danger Mouse or
So cool.
whoever it is that I'm playing with at that time, and it wakens something in me, and it just brings me such a sense of joy. And you have like society tells you that that's stupid because it's not making money. You're
Mm,
investing all this time and your own money to buy these supplies, and you're just giving this stuff away. But there's something healing going on in me and something healing going on in the person who wants that
mm.
piece and hangs it on their wall, and it awakens something in them. And for me, that's what it's all about.
There's so many beautiful things that came up as you were speaking there. I love it so much. And the first thing is that I think we forget that art is an inherently a very generous act.
Mhm.
I think we think it's very self-indulgent to commit ourselves to the creative act, forgetting just how absolutely generous it is. The only reason why I mean, you could probably argue with me about this, but a huge point to living is because of the creations we get to consume.
Mhm.
Like, that's why life is delicious. And when we dare to create and then dare to share our art like you did, you have no understanding of how absolutely generous that is, of the nostalgia and the magic that you awakened in the person that sees and gets to witness your creations. Like, that's a generous act. Creativity is not a selfish act, it is generous. And whilst it can benefit you and it should benefit you and it should be a lot about who it is you are, please don't forget that when you create, you are doing something very important for the world.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about as you were speaking is this really complex relationship between art and money. And I love what you're doing. And again, it just speaks to the generosity of the artist spirit. And what it also does is it speaks to the revolutionary ways in which artists act. Like you can see there already, you're rebelling against a capitalist system that demands everything be worth a certain amount of money. Like that's why people are afraid of artists because we fuck up things and we fuck up, the rules. And I love that about us. But it is such a complex relationship with art and money. And I speak to so many artists who really struggle navigating, our capitalist system with the creative process. And it needs to be a really tenderly tended to topic, I think, because it can be so triggering for so many people.
Yeah, and I mean, I said to my wife the other day, we just did our taxes here, and we, had to compile everything. And, I used to work for Apple, which is, a big
Mm,
mega company, and, tax season was easy. You give them your W-2 form and, you tell them a couple things and you typically get money back. It's great,
hmm
And this now that I'm working for myself doing, social media things, some graphics design, my art, some writing, things like that. My wife works in this hair salon, so she's an artist in her own right,
Of course she is.
doing her stuff. And so basically we work for ourselves. We're self-employed. And our tax bill was through the roof
Mm,
this year. And I said to my wife, I'm like, it's almost like when you go out on your own to pursue your art, to pursue your passion, your calling, to do something in the world that doesn't feed the system directly like it would if you were just a robot going to Apple, and working like
Yes,
in an assembly line doing your thing. It's like you get a swift kick in the butt
you're
for
punished.
wanting to do something different. And I said, and that makes me mad. It makes me all the more want to do this and make it
I
work,
know.
right? Like it just makes me want to rebel against that.
I love hearing you say that because me and my partner James, we think about this all the time,
Mm,
and we think about how uh, difficult the bureaucracy is for small independent artists to navigate, and how easy it is if you simply join the system,
yeah,
and how intentional that is. They'd much rather us just be the cog in the machine. And we are punished financially. We're punished with our time. Like I'm punished mentally because I cannot understand the loops and hoops we have to jump through as a small business to be compliant with, for me, it's the Australian tax regulations.
mm.
And I think about how much easier it was for me when I was in corporate to just, yeah, they did it for me. They did
Yeah,
everything for me.
easy.
And it feels so vindictive. It feels so obviously pointed. Like, can't you just do something normal? I feel like is what wouldn't it be easier if you just joined up and did exactly what we wanted you to do? So I have a huge amount of compassion for all artists who are navigating these big systems, especially at tax time. Like it seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but I am so proud of us
Yeah,
for the way that we navigate that because it is very, very difficult. And I also we're artists, so we suck at stuff like that. But I'm
right.
so, so proud of us for navigating it and for pursuing it and continuing on despite how difficult it's made for us.
Yeah, when we got the tax bill and we wrote the check, I said to them, I'm like, look at us. We did it.
Look, I'm
We
so
did
proud of
it.
you both.
Yeah,
I'm
we did
so
it.
proud of you
I don't know
both.
how we did it, but we did it.
I was engaging with a new accountant today because we have a complicated situation with being Australian but living in the UK. And again, I was like, this is so fucking complex. And I really hate it, Glenn.
Yeah,
But I was like, I'm so proud of us
yeah.
because this is us fighting for our art in a world that does not wish us to be successful in our
That's
pursuits.
that's right. When you were talking about the art being healing, not just for you, but for the world, I was thinking about a couple weeks ago, we took our daughter to see the new Minecraft movie.
Ah, yes.
And have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, so in the movie, just like the general plot, they need to save this other world that exists behind the veil of our own world, where you can create, anything that you can imagine. And so the world is in trouble. There's this dark, I don't know, force, entity, whatever, trying to remove all forms of creativity from it. And there's this quote that struck me so hard. I'm in the movie theater, made my eyes well up with tears. I'm probably the only father who was sitting in the Minecraft movie about to
Crying.
weep, but here I am. And one of the characters says, if we want to save the world, creativity is the key to survival.
Oh,
And
Minecraft.
that just, I was like, oh, like everything just stopped in my mind. And I feel like so much can be unlocked. Like so many barriers can come down, not just for us personally, but collectively as a society when we pour ourselves into creating art, music, writing, new ideas to solve old problems, whatever. And when we surround ourselves with other people's art and creativity. Like I follow so many people like yourself, and every time that you post something like one of your signs that you have there in the background and you say something like it inspires me. And like almost want to print out some of those signs so I can hang them around and like surround myself with that art because when
Mm,
we do that, it shifts some kind of energy in the air and it just makes the path forward so much more clear.
yeah. Oh my God, I love that. Which character said that line? I'm absolutely
I want to say it
obsessed.
was Steve. I think it was Steve.
Is that Jack Black's character? Because that's what
Yeah,
yeah, great. That's
I'm
what I'm
pretty sure it
envisioning.
was him. Yeah,
I feel like Jack Black, he gets what we're talking about.
yeah,
He seems a man that's like understands how central creativity is for healing. Yeah, I mean, I that gives me shivers, that line. I mean, it's all I fucking go on about. I'm just constantly wanking on about how art is going to save us.
yeah,
And it is constantly thought of as a very delusional, dreamy thing to say, but I'm being so fucking practical and deadly serious.
yeah.
And it's just, not being taken seriously, I think. So I love to hear that that's was in the Minecraft movie and that a load of kids are getting this understanding that like it's creativity. Like we keep wanting answers. We keep looking for like, how come the world is in such a dire place? Like what can we do? And I'm like, it's time to make some art.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And art can be various things, right? I mean, it's not like people
Exactly.
think art's just like art with a paintbrush. Well, I can't do anything with a paintbrush, but art is so much more than just painting. Like you said, it's writing, it's even
So
cooking. It's cooking, right? I mean, you
it's
could cook something.
gardening.
Yeah, whatever it is, gardening. That's
Yeah,
it.
I think sometimes something that I've as retrospectively like I love the title of my book, like I've got it tattooed on my fucking arm, but I know that the word art is incredibly intimidating to a lot of people, and I wonder if using a different word would have been beneficial because I know people hear art and they think, "Oh, I can't draw. I can't draw." And it's like, okay, well, first of all, I've got questions about that. Who told you that? Like, I don't care if you think you can't draw, let's draw.
Yep.
But also, art is not just, the visual arts. Art is it's the creative act. For me, the definition of art is just anything made with the intention to connect. And that can be so many different things, whether it is gardening, whether it's, you start a YouTube channel where you review your favorite Pokemon cards, whether it's writing books, whether it's writing Substacks, whether it's, I met a chimney sweep the other day and he was sweeping the chimney and he left and he just before he left, he had seen all my art around my house and he goes, I just want to tell you that I write children's books. And I was like, everyone has something small to give the world.
That's
And
right.
we need to realize that.
That's right. That's so good. All right, Act Two, you are the artist.
Mm,
I love this section. One of the things I was thinking about when reading this section is about social media and how it can be a good thing for creators at times, right? Because we talked about we can share our paintings and drawings, we can share excerpts of our writing, we can share clips of our music, pictures of the food the dishes we've created, whatever. Possibilities are endless for creators. It's a great time to be alive. But as good as it is, right, the problem for me that for social media that I've run into a lot is that it can almost make us addicted to that external validation so
mm,
much that if I post something and very few people like it, right, it gets been up for a couple hours and only like one person likes it, it's like, well, maybe I should take it down, right?
mm. Yeah.
Maybe it's not as good as I thought it was, right?
Yes.
And that spirals into I'm a terrible artist, I'm a terrible
Mm.
cook or musician or whatever. Like nothing I make is ever enough, and this is terrible, and I should just go back and work at Apple or whatever it is that
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
work. And you have this quote in Act Two where you say you can see the dire consequences for creatives who have received huge amounts of external validation but have never validated themselves. And
Mm,
so, talk to me about the importance of validating ourselves as creatives, especially in the social media culture, and maybe a little
mm,
bit about what does that look like for you in your journey to learn to
mm.
validate yourself? How has that been important to you?
Yeah, I love that you brought this topic up. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because I think it's absolutely crucial to having a creative life that feels joyful. Um, you can look at to, and I could point to, incredibly famous creatives who have very clearly received just the most ridiculous amount of external validation, and it has never ever been enough.
Mm,
And the reason why it was never enough is because they never chose themselves first. They were chosen by the people, but they never chose themselves. They were coronated by the people, but they never put the crown on themselves. And this is just a recipe for deep, deep disaster. Because at the end of the day, it is a beautiful thing to see people connect with your art. It is. And I love attention and I love when someone connects with a piece of work. And to hear that you love my book, like truly is so important to me. But it wouldn't mean shit unless I also knew that I had something to give. And I would be constantly trying to gather external validation to fill a hole that could never be filled. And that hole is that I'd never given myself permission.
mm,
I'd never given myself validation. And so this is such a big important part of the journey, to choose ourselves before we are chosen. And for me, for example, on social media, a big thing that I do, and I still can get, in my head, if a post does incredibly poorly, I might be like, oh, it's just, I'm bummed. But what I love to do before I share any of my work is to validate myself before it is validated. So I ask myself two questions. I say, is it vulnerable and is it generous? And if I'm happy with both of those categories, like it feels vulnerable, like it feels like I'm exposing myself in some sort of way. And if I do I feel like it's going to serve someone else in a little bit of a way, then I share it. And
Mm.
I know that I have loved it before anybody else loved it. I know I have approved of it before anyone else approved of it. And that doesn't change, no matter if it gets no likes or if it gets lots of likes. I still thought that. And my voice matters and my opinion really matters.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to get to this place. It's taken me years to get to this place for me to respect my own opinion, but it is a crucial part of the creative's journey. Otherwise, you will be miserable.
Yeah.
You will be absolutely miserable. So I have a practice of self-coronating, self-choosing, like basically every day. I use it in a lot of my journaling entries. I journal every morning and I heap praise upon myself from myself
Mm.
because I love what I do. I love what I create. I don't think everything that I create is absolutely wonderful. I know I create a load of shit too, but I still know my worth. And I put that on the pages of my journal each day so that I remember that if I get heaped with praise today or if I don't, it doesn't matter because I chose myself first.
Yeah. That's so good. I've been doing a lot of work in following the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicola Pera,
That,
and
yes,
she
amazing.
talks a lot about, just your true self and how
Mm,
your thoughts are not you, right? Like there's a
mm,
separation there. And we've been talking to our daughter about this. We have this idea with her called the mind table, where around the table you have all of your feelings and your emotions, whether it's anger, it's sadness, it's criticism, whatever
mm,
those voices are inside, like they're there and they're welcome to be there, but they don't sit at the head of the table. At the head of the table is your true self. And that's the part of you
mm.
that's always been. And that's a voice of love and compassion and kindness and understanding. And you can use that voice to speak to yourself. And so I've been
Oh,
trying to do
so
that
beautiful.
for myself. And that's why, like on my screen, I put artist there because, in the past it was, I would be hesitant to call myself an artist because, again,
Mm.
to that voice that came to me when I was younger, your art's not good
Yeah.
enough to be an artist. And so, I would, even when I left Apple, I'd tell people, well, I do social media for some people. I create some graphics for some people, like kind of skating
You're
around
avoiding
that.
it.
Yeah, kind of skating around that word. And then, I just, when I came across your book and doing the stuff with Dr. Nicole, I was like, you know what? I am an artist. I'm an artist and I just make
Mm.
stuff. I make
Yeah.
stuff. I make a lot of things. I make a podcast. I have a Substack. I do painting. I do drawing. I make stuff. I'm an artist. That's what I do.
It's absolutely like I think actually like these titles, like, titles might not be useful for everyone, but I do think they can be an incredible useful tool for this kind of concept of like choosing yourself and
Mhm.
validating yourself. If you're making stuff, you're an artist. If you're
Right.
writing stuff, you're a writer. Like you are. And claiming those titles is so powerful, especially because we come from a culture which says you're only allowed to call yourself that when someone else gives it to you.
Yep.
So to self-coronate and to self like acclaim these words is so powerful. And I always say, and anyone is listening who hasn't done it yet, put it in your fucking Instagram bio. Like put it on your computer, like claim these words. That's very powerful
Yep.
and they are yours. They are yours to claim.
That's right. You can even make it your motto every morning, just to get up in the morning, look at yourself in the
Yeah.
mirror and say, I am an artist.
Yeah,
And that's
baby.
it. Yeah. Even my wife, I mean, like you said, I mean, she's a hairstylist. And I said to her, I'm like,
She's an artist.
yeah, she came home and she showed me this picture. She did somebody's hair. It was like purple and stuff. I'm like, man, that is a piece
That's
of
art,
art
baby.
right there. I mean, look at that. I mean, the before and after, I was like, that's a complete change. I'm like, that person's head was your canvas.
Oh my God, yes.
Right?
Again, I think, we're so elitist as to what is and
Yeah,
isn't art.
that's
I have
right.
no time for people who want to get very pernickety about what is and isn't art. Like, did you make it? Did you want it to connect with someone? It's art, baby, and shut up.
That's right. That's right. All right, so Act 3 is blocks, and you talk about blocks to creativity or
Mm,
procrastination, perfectionism, all these different things. Can you take us into a day, a week, a month in the life of Amie McNee? Which one of these, you call them horsemen of the creative apocalypse? Which one of these is your like nemesis? Which one of them shows up for you, the
mm.
most? And what does it look like in your everyday life to grapple with these things?
I think procrastination for me is probably the biggest one at the moment. I'm very tired coming
I
off
was
the
gonna
back of
say you're
my.
exhausted.
I'm exhausted. I'm tired coming off the back of this book tour, and I've been giving myself a lot of grace, a lot of rest. Burnout is a big chapter in the book too, because we have to be so careful with, how vulnerable our work is. Means we're very vulnerable to burnout. So I've been very careful with myself with this exhaustion. Um, but as I like creep back into wanting to create, wanting to get back to my books, like I feel avoidance come out very strongly, and I have a history of chronic avoidance of the art. And I know so many of you can relate to this. Procrastination and the artist, like two peas in a pod, baby. Like this is going to be something we all navigate. And it's not all going to be bad necessarily. Procrastination is a really healthy part of the creative journey too. It's when it becomes chronic that it becomes an issue. When you don't get to create, or you don't get to finish anything, or you don't get to do what it is you know you're here to do, that's when it becomes an issue. And that is something I've really navigated a lot in my life. And I've had to come face to face with the question of, what am I running from? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what procrastination is. Like when you get up from your chair and you run from your art, what is it you're running from? What's the feeling? What are you trying to avoid? And, there were some very confronting answers there for me. But very useful answers as well. I have a deep, one of the ones that I'm really navigating right now is I have a deep fear of not knowing what's next. And so when I sit down and I pause because I'm not sure what the next paragraph says, or I don't know what the next plot point is, a very uncomfortable feeling of not knowing.
Mm.
And I want makes me want to leave, and I will leave. I'll get up, I'll move. And then I have to ask myself, why have you gotten up from your chair? What is it you're running from? And so I'm really at the moment working on being comfortable with not knowing and being able to sit through the discomfort of not having an idea and knowing that it is safe not to know and that I can trust that an idea will come, and not to not freeze up and run as soon as that moment happens.
Mm.
So for me at the moment, procrastination is the thing that I'm battling with the most.
Mm. Yeah, I think, I've always been that person who needs to have a plan,
Mm,
and like I've always got my I's dotted and my T's crossed and everything is set to go. And if something doesn't go according to plan, it's like a complete disaster in my mind. And that has
mm,
various things to do with my childhood. But I've noticed that in my own creations as well, is that, when I even like with the podcast, I mean, it's been going on now for like 6 years. And I feel like I always
wow.
have to have like the next conversation lined up. And like if I don't know where I'm going, I feel like this panic inside and I will
Mm,
walk away from it because I feel like it's too overwhelming for me to sit here and not have a plan. But I've realized that it's a lot of times it's that not having the plan where the best ideas
yeah.
oftentimes come to be. And I don't know if you've noticed that as well, but I feel like when I sit down here with no agenda, it's a completely blank slate, the wildest things begin to
So
take place.
beautiful. I think that it speaks to, when we deconstruct perfectionism, when we say, oh, these standards that I have to hit, like actually, maybe I don't need to hit them. Maybe I'm going to allow mess into the process. Like mess and the artist, they belong together.
Mm,
And unfortunately, for a lot of us, we've been told that mess is criminal, that mess is immoral, that mess will mean you're a failure. And so we've developed creative practices that don't allow for mistakes, that don't allow for free play, that don't allow for things going wrong. When that is actually where so much of creative genius comes from, in the mess, in the mistakes, in the huge fuck ups. But we've just never allowed it because it's never felt safe
yeah.
to give ourselves that space.
Right. Yeah. I think the one that you talk about in the book that is the biggest block for me is comparison. Just thinking about again, I mean, it just goes back to that voice when I was a kid, but like my stuff isn't good enough.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
feel like social media, pours fuel on that fire because you can
Mm,
surround yourself with so many people who are creating stuff and everybody shows their highlight reel, right? Nobody shows the crappy stuff that they make. It's all the masterpieces and all the
of
finished
course.
products, it's all the polished things and it's the stuff that's, hanging in somebody's house or whatever it is. And you
Mm,
can compare that, to my own stuff. And I'm like, my stuff isn't really that good. So one
mm,
of the things I've tried to do, first of all, I think awareness to any of these is key, right? Like
of
being
course.
aware that this is my block is a huge starting point. So I've been
Hmm.
able to say, you know what, like I know that social media does that to me. So what I'm going to do is I put all my social media apps in a folder on my phone, and the folder's titled Check Less. And so when I
Mm,
open the folder, I see that check less message, and then it's reminding me to ask myself, like, why am I going on here right now? Do I want to
Mm,
share something that I've made? Do I want to go and see what my friends are up to? Do I want to go encourage somebody else with what they've made? Or am I going to do endless scrolling where I'm going to end up in this pit
mm,
of despair where I'm going to hate
mm.
everything about myself and my own art? And so that's been a helpful thing for me is just to be aware of the thing that blocks me and then
It's
have
so
like a
beautiful.
have a way around it or a way to kind of lessen
Yeah.
it.
You know where the trigger is. And so having boundaries around that is just a beautiful way to take care of yourself. I used to do the thing where I would have my notes app next to Instagram. And before I was allowed to click Instagram, I had to go on my notes app and I had to write it down. I had to say, why am I going on this app? And so it brought this practice of intention. So sometimes I'd be like, I'm just going on it because like I'm addicted and this is where I was gonna go. Like,
Right.
and then I would be like, okay, well, I'm not going to. I'm choosing not to.
Yeah.
Or I'd be like, I want to go on it, and then I would go on it. But it was intentional. And I had to have just that moment's break. It was really interesting. And again, like, you know, I think a lot of the times we are almost addicted to this pattern of, oh, I want to compare myself. I want to feel, this bizarre and horrible feeling of jealousy and comparison. And having those boundaries in is so important because it can be so damaging.
Yeah.
And I love the way you're taking care of yourself there. And for anyone else who's navigating these feelings of jealousy or comparison, I just want to remind you that you're like a one-time phenomenon in this universe. And you are so unique, and no one can do what you can do. And I need you to stay in your lane. And if that means you're unfollowing people who are distracting you and who are making you feel less than, then unfollow them. I need you to stay in your lane because you have such important things to do on your own timeline, in your own time, and you're not behind anyone. You're not in front of anyone either. Like this is your game in competition with no one.
That's right. So good. Amy, I could talk to you all day. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So Act 4, the last part of the book is called Building an Abundant Practice. So first of all, can you define what abundant practice is? What exactly does that mean for somebody? And then secondly, what advice do you want to leave us with as we depart this
Mm.
virtual space? We leave this conversation, we head out to, maybe continue a creative practice, maybe,
Mm.
change a practice that already exists, maybe just begin something that's brand new. What are your words of wisdom for us?
Okay, thank you, Glenn. All right, first of all, an abundant practice, I think it's going to look different to everyone.
Hmm.
But I think I needed this conversation to be last because it was like we can move through blocks, but how are you going to build an actual creative life that like delights you? Because we've been sold a story of what creative success is. And it may not be what you want. And we need to define what creative success looks like for us. We need to define like how it is we want to express ourselves. We've just been told stories like if you want to be a successful novelist, you should write books like this, and this is how you're going to be successful. And then you need to be picked by this publisher. Like there are so many rules around how to do the creative journey, and they should all be broken because you are completely unique, as I just said, and you need to define the rules that you want to live by and create by. So it's kind of like this like exciting blank page of like let's tell our own stories the way we want to tell them. Let's write our next chapters the way we want to write them because I'm so tired of artists doing what they're supposed to do and then they end up hating their art, their creative life, everything about their practice. And I think you can watch a lot of, again, very famous celebrities. I was watching the beautiful Lewis Capaldi documentary the other day, incredibly famous and successful musician. I don't want any part of his success, the way that he is controlled by music systems and the producers, the way that he's like bustled around doing things he doesn't want to do. Like that is not success to me. And so I need creatives to understand what it is they actually want to do. How is it you want to create? What space do you want to take up? And we don't need all the answers, but we get to be curious about what our creative life is going to look like. And in terms of what I want to leave you with, it's a big question,
Big
Glenn. I
one.
want to leave you with lots of
No
different things.
pressure.
I think I'm going to leave it with a little thing from my last chapter, which is the celebration chapter. Um, Artists just, we're not celebrated anywhere near enough, especially when we're earlier on in the journey. No one's, being proud of you because you made a shitty piece of art, and that you've never made before, that you brought out the watercolors that you haven't touched in 10 years and you made a huge mess. No one's clapping for you. But we deserve to be clapped for, and we deserve to celebrate all of the magic that happens on this creative journey. So for me, I have this exercise that I've been really enjoying lately, which is called the proof list, where you just write down all the tiny little creative wins that you've had. And this would be some really small ones. You might have bigger ones you might want to put on there, but just acknowledging the journey you have already been on. I bought myself new pens. I tried to do a, new experiment on the guitar. Like whatever it is, just write them down and realize that you are already so on this journey and that you're already doing magical things, even if it is baby steps at a time. I'm so tired of artists only looking forwards and never recognizing that you've done magical things in the past already.
So good. It's so good. Do you mind if I tell you what that last section inspired me to do
Oh,
this summer?
please.
Okay. So I had a lot of, not a lot, but I had a few artists who were telling me, your stuff is really good. You should try to, get it. In like a small like local gallery type thing. People would maybe love that colorful stuff or, look into like a flea market type thing where, you sell your stuff. Like people, it would be really good. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I looked around, there were like a couple places where there's a thing in town where they're having like a July 4th thing and they're gonna have tables set up and people could sell stuff. So I started filling out the application. I got like to the very end and I was about to hit send. I'm like, nah, I don't really want to do this. Like I feel like this just isn't my vibe. I was like, what can I do that would be really creative and really just kind of buck the system a little bit? And
Mm,
so what I decided to do is I'm going to do this thing called Colorful Fridays, where every Friday I'm going to take a new piece of art, like a new canvas, and I'm gonna take that piece of art along with one of Dr. Nicole's books because her book has really helped
mm,
me with my inner child stuff. And I'm gonna put a note with it. And my daughter and I are gonna go hide it somewhere, leave it somewhere in the community. It's like a free piece of art that we're gonna give away with one of her books and a note, kind of what that piece of art is about, and like a link to the website, and hopefully connect with some people and just try to inspire some people. So again, like it's something, it's not gonna make me a dime and it's
no.
probably going to actually cost me money because I'm
Yeah.
gonna buy the supplies and stuff. But I feel like that brings my heart alive. Whereas the
Mm,
idea of sitting behind a table, maybe
mm.
selling some pieces to people, doesn't really do very much for me. So
I mean, obviously that lights me the fuck up, Glenn. I just like am delighted by that. And it's a perfect example of just like rebelling against like what you are supposed to do.
yeah,
It's so beautiful, so generous, and so exciting. I love it.
thank you. Well, you were a lot of the inspiration, so thank you.
Glenn, what a fucking honor. I'm so grateful that we connected and your work is so important and I really hope you know that.
Thank you. Well, we are just about out of time, but this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you, appreciate your heart and your generosity, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Definitely. Real quick, is there any place you want to direct us to online where people can? You already mentioned your Instagram, but any place else you want to direct us to?
Nah, just if you want support and love and compassion as you navigate your creative journey, no matter where it is you are on this creative journey, we need your art. She's just Google her. She'll be somewhere.
That's
Or
it.
go to your indie bookstore, ask her to ship them in. I would love to be a part of your journey. Be an honor to be a part of your journey.
Awesome. I'll put the links in the show notes. Maybe we can do it
Thank you,
again.
Glenn.